Hello friends, today we'll take a look at the history of landscape architecture. Defined as the art of composing buildings and paving with landform, vegetation and water, landscape architecture is as old as civilization. Its first application was to the design of cities and gardens. Gilgamesh boasted that 1/3 of the whole city is garden and 1/3 is field. He was king of Uruk, sometime between 2800 and 2500 BCE. Use of the term landscape architecture is more recent in their time. We begin with a time far from ours. It all began when Vitruvius Pollio wrote the treatise De Architectura in circa 27 BC. Marcus Vitruvius Pollio, commonly known as Vitruvius, was a Roman author, architect, civil engineer, and military engineer during the 1st century BC. He later died on 15 BC. He wrote the first books about landscape architecture. He talks to his emperor on chapter 1 of the book Preface, acknowledging the emperor of the Roman Republic. He then introduced the fundamental principles of design, order, eurythmy, symmetry, propriety, and economy in chapter 2. And the most famous section in chapter 3 are commodity, firmness, and delight. On chapter 4 and 6, he highlighted the basis for landscape architecture and as to a site's relation to climate. Roman towns had very little spaces for what we call now as gardens, and some of their lands are allocated as outdoor rooms. So Pollio wrote in treating those lands in his books. He continued to write books covering the other different type of building. For the period before the 1800s, the history of landscape architecture, formerly landscape gardening, is largely that of master planning and garden design for manor houses, palaces, and royal properties, religious complexes, and centers of government. An example is the extensive work by André Le Notre for King Louis of France at the Palace of Versailles. The first person to write of making a landscape was Joseph Addison in a series of essays entitled On the Pleasure of the Imagination in 1712. William Andrews Nesfield, who designed garden areas for Buckingham Palace in London and Castle Howard in Yorkshire, was the first person to use landscape architect as a professional title. The term was taken up by John Claudius Loudon and used to describe a specific type of architecture suited to being placed in designed landscapes. Loudon was admired by the American designer and theorist Andrew Jackson Downing, and landscape architect was the subject of a chapter in Downing's book, A Treatise on the Theory and Practice of Landscape Gardening, adapted to North America, 1841. The first person to use the term for the art of design public open space, which is modern usage, was Frederick Law Olmsted in 1864. He is known as the father of American landscape architecture. This led to its adaptation by Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvet Vaux. Olmsted and a man named George Oscar gave a different slant to the meaning of landscape architecture, using the term to describe the whole professional task of designing a composition of planting, landform, water, paving, and other structures. Their first use of term was in the winning entry for the design of Central Park in New York City. Olmsted and Vaux in 1863 adopted landscape architect as professional title and used it to describe their work for the planning of urban park systems. Olmsted's projects for the Emerald Necklace in Boston was widely admired and led to the use of landscape architect as a professional title. In Europe, initially by Patrick Guedes and Thomas Mawson, Frederick Law Olmsted and Beatrix Farrand with 8 other leading practitioners.